Hello and welcome to Team Build Tuesday. Like always, I'm your host, Kalder. Today we're going to be going over a 400-point Golden Age team. I'm going to start off with just introducing you all the characters in the team, then we'll kind of go through my mindset behind building the team, and then we'll tell you about each character individually and what they do for the team. So first up is Galactus at 100 points. Then the Atom from Superman and Wonder Woman at 15 points. These other two figures I borrowed for the tournament, and I do not own them, but the X-Men Dark Phoenix Saga Magneto Colossal at 25 points, the Avengers Infinity Groot at 20 points, and then we have two Weasels from the Deadpool set, both coming in at 25 points, the She-Hulk and Legacy card, that is kind of optional to play with Legacy card, but She-Hulk at 75 points, Copykat from the Deadpool set at 90 points, and then Blind Owl from the Deadpool set at 13 points. And lastly, finishing us off is the Spin Ring. That is a Mandarin Ring convention exclusive at 5 points. The team comes out to 397 points, and let's get into it. Points, age, and band figures. Obviously, you need to know how many points the build is going to be before you can start building. If it's going to be like a 100-point game, that just takes away too many options. Or if it's an average 300-point game to 400 points, you'll get a lot more options. Next, you'll need to know the age. If it's modern age, obviously, you'll need to double check what are the modern sets and what you can build from. If it is golden age, silver age, or all those other different kinds of ages, then you know that you can reach back as far as possible and you can take all sorts of fun figures to build your team around. And lastly is banned figures. In tournaments where it may be like a Prince tournament, like what we'll rerun, or a Pauper tournament, or even most Golden Age tournaments, some figures will be banned based on rarity or interactions, etc. So Golden Age will have figures like Felix Faust or Black Swan or something to that nature will be banned in tournaments. So this is going to be the basis for team building. So let's jump into choosing a figure or a style. Normally I will choose either a figure I've wanted to play for a while or just a comic accurate team which will build itself, and I'll want to build it around the main character of that team. A style is normally for more competitive things. If I want to try to pull off some crazy kill you all in one chain of attacks, if I want to do a multi-attack team, if I want to do an alpha strike team, if I want to do some form of maybe even don't die tech style team, then I'll build around that. Now, style and choosing a figure you want to build around can be one and the same, but that's normally what happens after I figure out points, age, band figures. I'll do choosing a figure or choosing a style, which brings us to support for the team / the figure's pros and cons. Do certain maps work well for your team? Do you need to win map? Does your figure need a lot of probability control? Does your figure need a lot of perplex? Figuring out the support pros and cons ultimately makes your team work or it doesn't work. Map choice is normally always the biggest one. A map can be a huge determining factor for the outcome of the game, and most times I would say the map is the most important part of the game. So once I have my support figured out, my pros and my cons figured out, that moves us to counters and weaknesses. Your team is not ever really going to be perfect. It won't ever be able to, I can never counter this team ever, or it has no weaknesses. No, that's normally not going to happen, or at least it's not going to happen very easily. So you always want to figure out what are bad maps for your team. What are figures to be looking out for? If there's a certain pulse wave piece or some kind of figure that your opponents might be able to play, then you need to keep in mind these counters and weaknesses when both building your team and when playing your team. It's okay to have a team and you know that you have a counter to it. That's totally fine. You know that if someone is playing Immortal Hulk that you can't handle him, and that's okay. You should at least make a plan for how you can adapt to the situation. You don't always have to build for every single thing in team building for your team, because a lot of the time it's not possible to build for every single thing. Which brings us to, is it good and is it fun? I have probably built more teams and then deleted them after taking a screenshot of the team after I realized I'd built an entire team and it just wasn't good. I've went through all the steps of my team building plan and it was still just kind of a bad team. It wasn't very rounded, didn't have good synergy. Maybe the keyword I was building out of wasn't optimal, and I might have to choose a different keyword for the figure that I chose to build around. And then next up, is it fun? Is it a fun team to play, and is it a fun team to play against? A lot of the time, this is more in casual and competitive. Maybe people don't care so much about fun. I know I still do, and that's okay. But in casual, if I build a team that I know is going to be good, that is going to have really good synergies for myself, will it still be fun for somebody else to play against? After all, to me, this game is all about having fun. You don't just want to get stomped and get destroyed, but you also want to have fun playing for both you and your opponent. First up, we have Magneto, who's a very simple sidestep telekinesis leadership piece with some fight and indom. The main reason we're playing him is for his traits. Leadership free, choose a character in range of line of fire, place that character in a square adjacent to its current square. This is going to give us great mobility. Next up is Groot. We're mainly playing Groot for his leadership in order for him to remove tokens from Galactus. He also has the Before the Guardians trait. Since he isn't part of a theme team, he is going to have +1 attack and defense this game. We will also have access to the Walking Woods, and while giving our opponent a Dr. Leslie Evans. The outwit does not hurt us in the slightest. Next up is She-Hulk. She has a pretty stacked dial. She can be a pretty good secondary attacker. She has a trait, I'm not Prime worthy. I'll show you Prime worthy. She-Hulk and adjacent friendly characters modify attack +1 when attacking a Prime character. She-Hulk and adjacent friendly characters take a maximum of 1 damage from Prime characters. Her second trait is File for a change of venue. If She-Hulk isn't part of a theme team the first time this game you wouldn't win a roll for first player, you may roll again and add 1 to the result. Her special speed power is Charge Flurry, and she moves through and destroys blocking terrain, and then her damage power is Objection and Willpower Perplex. Next up is Blind Owl. For 13 points, she has Stealth, a special attack, damage powers. She has a trait, you have to stay in the Dead Hut. At the end of your turn, if Blind Owl is not in a starting area, deal her 1 damage. Her special attack power is the old Booby Trap. Give Blind Owl a power action. When she occupies a starting area, deal 1 penetrating damage to a character in that starting area and place that character adjacent to but outside the starting area. Then she has Deadpool listens to me sometimes. She can use Perplex to target a character that hasn't already been targeted by Perplex this turn. She can use it to target a character in your starting area or to target a character with Deadpool in its name anywhere on the map. Next up is Weasel. I love Weasel. He's stealth for 27 points. He has a special attack and damage power as well, just like Blind Owl does, and he does roll on to some Pulse Wave with 5 range if the moment calls on him. He has I Thought I Fixed That. Give Weasel a free action and choose a friendly character within 4 squares in line of fire, or a friendly character with Deadpool in its name anywhere on the map. This turn, each time the chosen character makes an attack roll for a ranged combat attack and misses by 1, you may reroll that attack roll unless it's a crit miss. Then Tech Guru. Weasel can use enhancement once per turn. When he does, also modify the attacking character's attack and range values, both by +1. Weasel is an amazing support for this team. Next is Copykat. Her dial isn't much to look at, but that's sort of the point. With only sidestep, willpower, and exploit, you're thinking this is kind of a waste of 90 points, but that's where the infiltrate my enemy's trait comes in. Before placing characters in your starting area, you may choose an opposing character that is 100 points or less, not named Copykat. Copykat becomes friendly to that character's force, and that character becomes friendly to your force. Any game effects assigned to each of them is now assigned to the other. When Copykat fails a roll for shape change, uses regen, or is knocked out after actions resolve, the effect ends, and any game effects assigned to each of them is now assigned to the other. So this is going to be great to take away counters from my team. Copykat can use shape change, give Copykat a free action, and choose a standard power and adjacent friendly character or the character she exchanges can use. Copykat can use that power to your next turn. The spin ring is going to be TK and then free. Choose a character within 3 squares, line of fire. Place that character in a square adjacent, which is really cool. And then, of course, they can obviously be equipped with a second Mandarin ring if I have it, which I don't. Next is the Atom. Very simple sidestep and power. Mostly playing him because I like the Atom, and then his Colossal Retaliation is fun. Basically, it lets you be able to make an attack targeting the chosen character, and every character within 2 squares of that character, ignoring shape change, super senses, and combat reflexes. Now it's Big G himself. He starts with some Outwit, Pulse Wave, he has 11 range, triple targets, and then he moves on to some Pen Blast with Prob, which is the click he's going to be spending most of his time on this game. He has access to the Elemental Converter, where about turn 3 or 2, he should be able to be on number 1. He'll heal every time we see a PC click, which is just the Power Cosmic team ability, and he can heal once, twice, and then 3 times, 4 times, and I believe there might be one for 5. So yeah. And then he has a Stop Impervious regen, and he can reduce penetrating damage, which I completely forgot about in one game, but that's pretty funny. Next up, he has Improved Targeting Hindering, which is pretty much all Galactus needs if you win map. He can't be the target of an attack with more than 1 attack, and he has Landed on Earth, which is really, really great. So its power, place Galactus anywhere on the map except an opponent's starting area or special terrain. He can be placed on blocking terrain and immediately destroys it when doing so. Here's my basic starting area setup. So we have to play Galactus first since he's the biggest, so he's going to be placed there. Next, we have to fill out our starting area with the other Colossals because they are then the biggest figures. The starting area is going to expand all the way out to the edge, but since we have to make it so we can fit this front piece of Galactus, we'll be able to go to the third row here. We want to make sure Galactus is adjacent to both Weasels, either in the starting area or when he is placed adjacent via either Magneto or Blind Owl, and or the Spin Ring. We're going to have Groot next to Galactus, so even when he is flipped around, he'll be able to move and then be adjacent for leadership. The woods obviously are generated next to Groot. We have Blind Owl next to Magneto. Then we have the Atom right in front of She-Hulk in order for him to go pick up the ring. The woods can also go pick up the ring and drop it off for She-Hulk as well. And then we have our Copykat character. It could be anyone, so since it's under 100 points, it can be a lot of figures. So for right now, we're just going to say our Copykat character is right there. So to reiterate our steps of team building, the points was 400 Golden Age with several banned figures. Next up, I chose a figure to base my team around, which of course was Galactus. And then I chose his support and pros and cons. So Galactus's pros and cons are that, number one, a pro is that he's really big. He can see through outdoor blocking, and he can see through hindering, so he can get past stealth. He also has 11 range, and he has a pretty far reach. His cons are that he has no movement value at all. He has no speed powers, so he's a very immobile figure. His power action, you can just place him on the map, but that leaves him a sitting duck for the next turn. So we had to fix that problem. The way we could fix it is, of course, with placement. Since Galactus is a multi-base figure and he cannot be TK'd, but he can, however, still be placed. And when he is placed, he is placed in any square next to his own. So a turn 1 rollout is going to look something like this. We'll give Blind Owl a power action to then place Galactus like so outside of the starting area, so he's adjacent to both Weasels. When he's adjacent to both Weasels, he'll have +1 range, which means he's going to have a +2, and then if we sink a Perplex into it, that is going to give him 14 range, which is pretty darn amazing, which means he can go he can see 1 square out from my opponent's starting area. If I go ahead and place him again, I can easily see the back of the map. So that's only one of our placements with a Blind Owl power action. Our second placement can then be with a Magneto. Magneto easily, all he has to do is sidestep in order to see him. So we would probably sidestep out these woods to here. Magneto would sidestep, carry Blind Owl here, and we'll put Blind Owl in our real starting area so she doesn't take any damage next turn. So now Magneto is next, or can see Galactus because obviously Groot is tall. Now that he can see him, we can then, after Galactus has taken a shot this turn, we can just go ahead and place him back in the starting area. And then we can keep doing that with Magneto, placing him with Blind Owl, which is why, just in case Blind Owl dies or we don't want to push Blind Owl to death, we have the Spin Ring. Normally the Spin Ring, we can either have a Wood go bring the Spin Ring back to She-Hulk, or the Atom can go ahead and give the Spin Ring to She-Hulk, and she can take a power action to pick it up. So between Perplexes, Galactus can have a 14 range, seeing through, if we win map, seeing through basically all the terrain, shooting my opponent's back line. He is going to be, normally he'll be a 13 for 7, since I'll almost always put it to damage. He'll be able to reroll his roll if he misses by 1, and he has his own prob on top of that. So there's plenty of rerolls. There's some great stats. I mean, a 13 for 7 is nothing to scoff at, especially when it's penetrating damage. So that is going to be the basic rollout for the team. We have our leaderships, we have our TK, and we have our fun. So why Copykat? Well, we need to have Copykat in order to take the wind out of my opponent's sails. So there are just characters that Galactus either doesn't want to worry about, or there are characters that can absolutely cripple Galactus. So figures like the Black Leopard here, which means Galactus can only be a 10-17-3 once we are within the range of Black Leopard, can be really, really tough. 9 times out of 10, if I win map, I won't choose Black Leopard, but if I lose map, I will choose Black Leopard just in case. Because obviously if I win map, I should be able to shoot him before he gets within his range. But sometimes that's not the case. Also, figures include figures like their taxi. I'm using Overdrive here as an example, but there are plenty of taxis they can do. If it's going to be an Alpha Strike team and they can also cover the map, even if it's making close attacks, I do not want them to get the Alpha Strike off on me. They can take away my support, they can take Galactus down off of his Penbast clicks and onto some worse clicks. They can get rid of all of my Retail. Yeah, Alpha Strike is just no good, so it's probably best to just always take their taxi. And then, of course, since Copykat can choose anyone, I chose some like under 50 point or 50 point under guys, but Copykat can choose characters that are 100 points or less. So we could both, I could steal their Immortal Hulk or their Captain Marvel just as a reference for how good Copykat is. Now, if Felix Faust wasn't banned, I could also steal their Felix Faust, which is just really funny. So yeah, Copykat is quite the fun character. So that's how we get rid of Galactus's little con there. She-Hulk will let us reroll for a map. So hopefully we'll be able to win a map, but of course if it has a high theme, we won't be able to. I think there's another way you could build this team with Arcade, where you don't really build around Arcade so much, but you just sort of take away your opponent's plus to map, and that way it'll let you reroll in case you lose with a +1 with She-Hulk. Now, of course, once the rules change, the map roll won't be so bad, because then they'll get a +3, they'll get one roll, and then you'll get a roll again with a +1, which means someone will only ever have a +2 up on your map. But that's basically how Galactus works. You can go ahead and place him. You can place him around, which is really fun. And then he can shoot. So he just gets placed, he shoots, and then the Herald Dial just sort of happens. We don't really care too much about the Elemental Converter, but it is fun to have. I just really enjoy this team. A lot of figures are on it just because I enjoy playing them. This is slightly different version of maybe like a Batman Prime style team, but let me know, guys. I tried to cover all of Galactus's weaknesses. Obviously, if he loses map, basically what I would do if Galactus ever loses map and we go on an Ancient Hold or something, I would power action Galactus to destroy some blocking with his whole power action, place him, and then he can destroy blocking when he does that. And then I would place him back a couple of times with Magneto and then the Spin Ring to get him back to the starting area. And then we would basically do that again, but it depends on how fast my opposing force can just get up on me. And then if I ever want to play this game a little more casually, I just won't take a really big heavy hitter with Copykat. Instead, I'll just, I don't know, take someone else. Against Alpha Strike, it will probably just be one of the random Alpha Strike attackers or something to that nature. Against anything else, I would just probably not take like a Captain Marvel or something, or I would just take just a weaker figure, and then I would let, She-Hulk or Magneto sort of run out and make pot shots, and have Galactus make some pot shots too. But yeah, there's ways you can play this team where it's more fun, and you don't just smoke the opponent's team, a bunch right away, which can, kind of not be fun to play against sometimes. And, your opponent plays a figure to play that figure, so it really sucks when you take it with Copykat, but that's kind of what she does. So let me know, guys, if you enjoyed this team building video. Let me know if you want to see more of them. I enjoyed making them, so if I do more events and it's unique team building, I probably won't do a lot of 300 Modern unless I'm going to a 300 Modern tournament, but we'll see. But yeah, guys, if you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. You can support us on Patreon. We love to do Patreon giveaways. We love to make even more fun, crazy videos for YouTube. And as always, guys, happy trails.